Hi, this is Dan with QT Equipment, and today we're going to be looking at the recently redesigned EnPak A60GBHW by Miller Electric. So first off, I got to be honest, when Jeff from Miller brought this machine to us the first time, I wasn't all that excited about it. My natural bias in this industry is towards simple, reliable equipment that just works in the field. A lot of times vendors will send us improved technology, which is really just the old stuff with some more electronics that makes it more complicated, and it really doesn't solve any problems in the field for our end customers. And all that does really, it gives you a couple more bullet points on a marketing sheet, and maybe you can compare at a show that my product has this feature and yours doesn't. But a lot of times that extra technology that's just layered on and not well executed, it creates more problems with the guy in the field. They in turn call us. It creates more headaches for our service department, and it's just not a good deal at the end of the day. It's more expensive, it's less reliable, and so that's just my natural experience with vendors sending us new and improved products. I'm sorry, that's just what we've seen. So Jeff comes here with his new improved product. I'm not excited about it. I take a look, fast forward a couple of months, we get this machine, and somebody hits me up on social media and says, you need to make a video of this. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay. And the first thing I do is I print out the manual. The manual for this thing is 105 pages. I grab my highlighter, I sit down, I get through the first 10 pages, which are just the safety briefing in English, Spanish, and French. And I start reading about all the things that this machine does. And I'm like, wow, this machine is pretty cool. This does a lot. Maybe I was wrong to dismiss this in the beginning, and maybe I ought to take a second fresh look at this. I read the whole manual, and Jeff from Miller was very helpful for me understanding this machine. I talked to our install people. We'll get into that later. But at the end of the day, I should have not dismissed this machine right off the bat. This thing is well built, and we're going to get into everything that it does. First off, I'll give you a primer on why they call it the A60GBHW. I believe that the A is going to stand for air compressor, 60 for 60 CFM, G for generator, B for battery charger, H for hydraulics, and W for welder. Miller will correct me if I'm wrong on that. That long model number is just a representation of all the things that this machine does. Miller was one of the first ones to the market with a multifunction machine. There was probably other multifunction machines in the past before Miller, but Miller was really the first one to make the push on this back in probably 06, 07, and has popularized the multifunction machine. So let's get started with the engine on this, and we'll take it from there. This is all powered by a Kubota turbocharged diesel engine. This is 24.8 horsepower. Because it's turbocharged, they're able to do a lot more work. It produces more torque at a lower RPM. The other nice thing about this, it's got an auto start stop feature. We'll talk about that later. But unlike previous versions of the EnPak, if you've used one of these before, the RPMs would go up in steps. So I don't remember what the numbers were, but let's say a base idle was at 1800, and then when there was more demand from either the crane or the air compressor, it would jump up. It would make a big jump to 2400, and there was a couple of different steps, and I think it would max out at 3600. I guess I should have done my homework on this, but you guys know. This one is variable, so it will base idle at 1800, and then as a demand is placed on the machine, it'll gradually go up, so that if it only needs 2300 RPM, that's what it'll be at. There's not those hard stops. It's a more efficient way to run everything in this machine, and that's one of the things I really like about it. Dimensions on this machine, it's 46 inches long. It's 23 inches wide. That's what the manual says. It looks like maybe it's a little shorter than that or thinner than that. It fits comfortably on the side pack, and 26.5 inches tall. They say that this machine is about 10% smaller than previous EnPaks. It weighs 721 pounds. I had to check my notes on that. 721 pounds. They say that this machine is about 100 pounds lighter than previous versions of the EnPak, and they've done that, one, by taking away the inverter that used to be in there, and then they've reconfigured some of the mounting, the casted mounting pieces that were really heavy, so that they've shaved some weight there. However, in the grand scheme of the package, there's a lot of cabling on this machine. So with the cabling, and we had to add an inverter on this build, I don't know that you're quite at 100 pounds worth of savings. They did shave some weight off the original machine. You can mount this machine. We've got it mounted on the back of the EnPak, or back of the side pack here. Typically, we would mount it towards the front of the truck, where an air compressor would go. In the manual, it's going to warn you against mounting this inside of enclosed spaces. We've had customers ask us before to mount these EnPaks inside of enclosed spaces in the front of the load space, and although that gives you a really clean look, the problems with that are, number one, there's a lot going on in here and it needs to vent properly. Number two, there's a decent amount of maintenance that needs to be done on this, and if you're not keeping up on your maintenance, you're going to have problems, and so you want to make it convenient for whoever is going to service this machine, which I'm assuming is the tech that runs the truck, to get in there and do the service. The air compressor piece of this is a rotor comp air compressor. Rotor Comp is a very high quality manufacturer out of Germany. It's called out as a 60 CFM compressor. This is going to produce 58 CFM at 100 PSI. The PSI range on this is controlled on the control panel underneath the crane compartment. We'll get to that in a second. The range is between 90 and 175 PSI, which is a touch higher than what a lot of other compressors will give you. It's going to come out in a 3/4 inch line, and we've got this plumbed to two 10-gallon air tanks. The recommended air tanks setup for this machine is 20 gallons. You've got some rotary screw air compressor vendors out there that will tell you that you don't need an air tank with a rotary screw compressor, which is technically true. These screw compressors are 100% duty cycle, so unlike a piston, they don't need to cycle on and off. A piston likes to do that. A rotary screw likes to be run hard. That's the best part about a rotary screw. I asked Miller why the requirement on an air tank for these. It's a 20-gallon recommended, 10-gallon minimum, and they had a really good answer for that, is that if you don't have an air tank, there's so little volume from the air compressor to the regulator and everything else. There's so little volume with just the hoses that you could risk an overpressure situation when that compressor stops. So wherever you've got your max PSI set, that compressor is going to shut off pretty quickly, but it's not going to be so precise that you would never have an overpressure situation. So that tank acts as kind of an accumulator to just create some buffer inside the air system so that you don't have that. The other really good reason to put air tanks on these systems is that it's a very effective way to trap moisture and to make sure that that's not going through your tools. You can see that the fan is mounted on top of the box this time. This is also an electric fan. It's going to save horsepower compared to previous versions of this. But this fan, you have the ability to relocate it. So if you notice on the side here, you've got this odd looking panel. Well, if you mounted this EnPak on, let's say, a lube truck and you wanted to put it underneath the deck, You could relocate this fan to the side panel. You could flip the exhaust around, and then you wouldn't have to worry about airflow and air clearance. It's a nice thing that somebody's put some thought into. A lot of times when we ship out a truck, we make sure that there's plenty of air clearance around, let's say, an air compressor. And then somebody gets the truck and they put a box right next to it. And now we're going to create a lot of heat issues and a lot of service issues because the compressor's not getting enough airflow. With this fan being on top and then also the other vents are on the front here, there's very little chance that anybody's going to make some modifications down the road that's going to impact the airflow inside this box. Onto the hydraulics, which is a big piece of this machine because it's running the crane and the outriggers. You could also, I believe I saw in the manual, that you can run a hydraulic tool circuit off of that, but I'm not entirely sure. You've got a 20-gallon hydraulic tank here, nice thermometer. There's also a nice, they keep a record of the hydraulic oil temperature inside the control panel, which is really nice. The return filter is built in. This is a case drain, and then I believe this is a spot where you could add an immersion heater if you're working in really cold climates. This is going to feed a Cassapa hydraulic pump that's a variable displacement pump. So that's going to give you 8 gallons a minute at 3,000 PSI. I believe the max PSI on this is 3,500, and all that is controlled from your control panel. It's listed as a 50% duty cycle pump, which is the same as what the previous EnPak versions had. When you're working a crane and your outriggers, you shouldn't have any problems with duty cycle on that. The max flow is going to be 15 gallons a minute, and so again, you can control that from the panel. You can see we've got a pretty big bundle here. You've got a lot going on coming out of the machine. The machine does a lot of things. You've got an airline, you've got fuel pickup, fuel return, you've got multiple cables coming out and feeding the panel. You've got a cable going to the battery because this machine charges the chassis battery. More cabling is going to require more installation cost. A lot of these things are not included with the package, so there's going to be more installation cost with this new EnPak. Can I complain about something very small? I mean, there's not much to complain about on this machine, but look at this. Closes. Doesn't close. This bolt catches right on that connector. It's like when your kids get 99 out of 100 on their multiplication tables. And I mean, you want to be happy for them, but at the same time, you're like, buddy, you were so close. You were so close. 8 times 4, 32. Anyways, yeah, if they would have made that just a little bit shorter, it would have been perfect. All right, let's see if we can get this baby fired up here from the IMT remote. And I will say that we're very partial to IMT, obviously. This machine has a wiring harness, a harness that'll go from the machine to link up directly to IMT. They've got one for Stellar, they've got one for Auto Crane, and then they also have a universal 6-wire harness that will work for Palfinger and some other machines out there. But it's nice that they've got a dedicated IMT one that is already set up. So we're gonna flip our e-stop button out. We're going to turn our transmitter on as usual. We have TX and RX lights that are flashing, and we're going to hit engine start, and hopefully this works. There it is. So you can start and stop this machine from the remote. There, we've got it stopped. The thing you got to remember if you're watching this is make sure that your parking brake is set, and then also there's a switch that we use, one of the upfitter switches for the system power. So if you don't have that switch set, and that's what I screwed up yesterday, nothing will work. Let's talk about the noise. If you've ever stood next to a 300 horsepower engine with an 80 CFM rotary screw compressor running, you and I would not be able to have this conversation right now. This engine, again, tops out at 2,800 RPM. It would be very comfortable to work around this on a day-to-day basis. So the machine's running. I guess I should have done this earlier, but I need to deploy my stabilizers. That's going to be from the panel here. So this one's going to go out. You can hear the machine ramp up when it senses that it needs hydraulic power. So we've got our stabilizers set, and one of the things that Jeff wanted me to cover was crane speed. I've not run the crane a lot yet because we were inside the building and I didn't have a lot of room. And you can hear the engine cycling down when it doesn't need the hydraulics anymore. Let's boom up. Again, this crane is single proportional. The harder you squeeze this trigger, the faster that function's going to move. You're going to hit your function trigger, your function switch, and then you're going to pull the trigger. Let's rotate. That's pulling the trigger at full speed there. It feels similar to what a PTO setup would be. Let's test speed on the winch. I know this is something that a lot of technicians don't want to sit and wait on a very slow winch. And you can see how fast the EnPak responds to it sensing a load. We'll test extension out. Again, that's full speed. Feels pretty similar to what we would see on a traditional PTO setup. It's quicker in than out. And winch up. Speed operation is one thing. Being able to control your load is arguably way more important. And this thing feathers in really nice, smooth operation. We're going to get our crane stowed up here. Let's take a look at some of the settings. This is they call these soft buttons here. This is our start and stop button, and then this will select. So if you turn this and then press it in, you can go to troubleshooting. Let's go back to home, settings, system settings. So there's a lot of different options you can select here. Power priority. The engine can only do so much. So if the operator is asking the EnPak to do more than what the engine can do, what's the priority? Is the priority the hydraulics or the air compressor? You can set the air pressure minimum, the air pressure maximum. Again, this will go up to 175. You can hear the auto start stop feature right there. So we will select that. Air response. This is low, medium, and high, and this is pretty interesting. If you've got a full air tank and then you start using, let's say, a 3/4 inch EnPak, and the air pressure starts dropping quickly in your air tank, you can set the air response sensitivity, low, medium, and high, to how fast the air compressor kicks back on again. So that's a pretty nice feature. This auto start stop you can enable or disable, and then also the auto start stop time. This goes from 2 minutes to 60 minutes. I don't know why anybody would want 60 minutes of auto start stop. It does start and stop pretty quickly. So we've had the auto stop while we were sitting here, and although you can't auto start from the outriggers, if we select one of these outriggers, I don't think anything's going to happen. Nope, nothing happens. But if we hit a function on our transmitter for our crane, so let's say winch down, it should fire up. So it's not super fast, but I don't think it's a long enough wait time that it would be very annoying out in the field for a mechanic to continually be starting and stopping his machine. I guess it depends on what you're doing. And if you get used to it, I'm sure it doesn't bother guys. Back to the control panel, we've got RPM. You can either set that to always be at, back here, auto, always at 2800, or auto variable speed. Screen brightness, you can adjust the screen brightness, the hydraulic max pressure, the hydraulic max flow, the crane remote. This will be something that you just do during the initial installation and setup, depending on how your crane is set up to run. The crane remote threshold, this will adjust the sensitivity of your crane, so you can dial that in a little bit better. Tap to start, enable or disable, safe start, enable or disable, and set the power time at 10 minutes. The other thing I'll say about this control panel is I've had vendors bring us equipment and they will tell us, look, you just put this out in the field. It's so well designed, you don't have to do any training. And then it's like super complicated, right? It makes no sense. This panel, I just started messing around with it yesterday, and I'll tell you what, it is pretty intuitive. It's easy to get around. It's easy. I didn't have to, even though I read the manual before I started messing with the control panel, it is pretty well laid out and intuitive for the user. This is where you can plug in for either charging a battery or jump starting a piece of equipment. This is good for either 12 volt or 24 volt. If you're doing battery charging, it'll give you 150 amps of battery charge and 300 amps of crank assist. To charge a battery, it's pretty simple. You just press the battery button, and then you can choose 12 or 24 volt, press charge after everything's connected, and you're charging a battery. The EnPak comes with a 7,000 watt generator. There's no inverter now. That was a failure item. It was a high fail item on the EnPak the last time, so it didn't make its way into this version. But the power panel option, which is sold a la carte from Miller, you can get, this has a receptacle for 240 volts and then a receptacle, two receptacles for 120 volt, and those are GFCI protected. Onto the welding piece of this, you can see we've got our welding box tucked nice and neat in there. This machine does a lot, has a lot of welding capabilities, which shouldn't be a surprise because it's made by Miller Electric, which is one of the industry leaders for welding. This time, on this version of the EnPak, a lot of the welding stuff is already integrated into the machine, unlike previous versions where you had to go out and buy a suitcase welder to connect in. Let me tell you, I'm not going to get super in-depth into the welder piece of this because, number one, it would be a whole separate video. I already get in trouble for these things being too long as it is. And number two, there's probably I'm sure there's much better people out there on the interwebs, like my friend Isaac in Austin, IC Weld, shout out buddy, that should really take this machine, professional welders that should take this machine and do a full welding review of everything that it does. I will tell you that it's 325 amps. It's got a range of 330 to 325 amps, 100% duty cycle. You can stick weld, you can plug a suitcase in, you can plug a spool gun in, and you can also carbon arc gouge. There's two ways to fire up your air compressor. You can either use the air button that's on the control panel, or you can use the air compressor switch that's on your IMT transmitter. And the control panel will show you what the current PSI in the system is. It'll also show you the min and the max that you've set from your system settings. There you can hear the air compressor engage. The PSI is rising, and you can see your RPMs on your engine are going up slightly. Again, that's the variable piece of that, but not by much. Another really handy feature that this has is it connects directly into your battery. When the EnPak has additional power available, it's going to charge your battery, and you can see that on this display right here. Now's a good time to talk about maintenance. There's a fair amount of maintenance on this machine, and that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't recommend this for everybody. You're gonna need technicians that are gonna take the maintenance seriously. We've not had these out in the field yet. This is the first one we've built. I don't have a way of telling you how the long-term service intervals and problems with this machine have. But I can assure you that if you're not doing the maintenance on this machine as prescribed, you're probably going to have some problems. I won't go through everything that's required, that's in the manual, and they also give you a handy chart right here that shows you everything that you need to be looking out for. For example, every 8 hours you're taking a visual check on the oil level in your air compressor. Every 500 hours, you got a visual check on your air filter. One nice thing that I like on this is if you look here, like on the Kubota engine, it's going to give you 200 hours interval. It's going to give you a Miller part number, and it's also going to give you a Donaldson part number, which is really nice. Not a lot of equipment manufacturers do that. They're always trying to force you into buying their parts. So it's nice for them. In a couple of instances here, they're giving you a Miller part number and a Kubota part number. I think that's really a great thing for Miller. But you're gonna have to stay up on top of this, otherwise you're gonna have problems. Another thing I really like about working with Miller is that they have probably the best manuals and wiring diagrams in the industry. You would be surprised if you saw some of the joke manuals and wiring schematics we get from some major manufacturers. I'm sure that you see it in other areas in your job if you're out there working on heavy equipment, but you just don't understand why they don't put a little bit more effort into that. Miller's done a fantastic job, and they give you a nice wiring schematic right here with everything. Everything's well labeled inside the machine. If you have a problem and you're on the phone with tech support, you don't have to go find a manual somewhere. You've got it right here. Underneath this cover is your relays and your fuses, and man, it's really nice that they've put this in a weather-tight box like this. Everything's very well laid out. You'd be surprised at some of the equipment that we've gotten in here over the years that nobody thought that this equipment was going to work out in the field. I mean, Miller knows that they're going to sell you this box and it's going to work out in the field 12 months a year. It's going to be in California, it's going to be in Florida, it's going to be in Maine, it's going to be up in the oil patch of Canada. When you've got electrical components that aren't weather sealed, you've got relays, a $5 relay can cost thousands of dollars worth of downtime if you're not treating it right from the get-go in the engineering. Miller's done a great job with that. And you know, one more thing with the guys that send us poorly engineered products, they usually have a real jerk running the warranty department. And if you got a problem, you call up and they're like, oh yeah, we've never had that problem before. you're the only one in the country that's ever had that problem. Please send us some DNA evidence and we'll possibly consider your warranty 3 years from now. No, that's not the way it works with Miller. They've done a good job. They've engineered it right from the beginning. And if you have a problem, they have competent service people you can call and talk to, walk you through the problem. And if it was their fault, they cover it. We are close to being done here with this video. And again, I had to cut a lot of stuff out of this video just because this machine does so much. There's so many details that we could get into. If you want to learn more about this machine, we're happy to help you with that. And Miller's got some great resources. One of the biggest negatives on this machine, quite frankly, is going to be the cost. If you were going to list out the pros, it's a well-built machine. It does a lot. You've got the welding capability built in. There's very good documentation. It's got a great warranty, et cetera, et cetera. But this is an expensive machine. Miller's had 5 price increases this year. This is being shot in November of 2021. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've had 5 price increases from Miller this year already. And if you remember, if this is in the future, there's just a lot of turbulence right now in supply chains and commodity prices and everything else. But these machines have gone up a lot. They were already expensive. They've gone up a lot. This machine is going to cost you more than $35,000. And if you would compare this machine and this setup with a similar setup, traditional PTO pump, Trailblazer 325 under current prices right now, this machine is still probably $10,000, maybe a little less than that, more than a traditional setup. So it is expensive. Now, what do you get with that? You get a lot. You get a lot of welding capability. Your truck engine has the capability of being shut off. Let's talk about that for a second. When this idea was first pitched to everybody back in 2007, 2008. The driving factor on this, back then diesel fuel was more than $4 a gallon, was that you can do everything you need to do out in the field with your engine off, which is true. However, if you are working up in Michigan in January and it's 10 degrees and you've got snow up to your thigh, the only place you have to get warm is your cab. I've been out with guys and we're working out in the field and we're running an EnPak. Everything's going great. However, that truck chassis is still running so that you've got a warm place to get back to. And quite frankly, who can blame those people, right? Similar situation down in Florida. If you're in Miami in July and you're working out of an EnPak, everything's great, one of the things you have to worry about is heat stroke. And your safe spot, you're in the middle of nowhere, your safe place, if you start feeling lightheaded or whatever heat stroke symptoms start coming on for you, your safe place is your chassis, the cab of your chassis, your air-conditioned cab. And so the promise that we'll be able to do everything with your chassis engine off is not true 100% of the time. So that's something that you're going to have to evaluate in your fleet. Some people have tried to do it with enforcing telematics and taking the more stick approach to things. If you were a owner-operator, let's say, and you worked in pretty mild climates most of the year, and you really wanted to watch your fuel consumption, I'm sure that you can make a much better business case for an EnPak than somebody that's working in a very cold climate all the time with a fleet of technicians who, you know, aren't paying the bills. And so again, that's a business case that you're going to have to evaluate on for your fleet and doing the right thing for your fleet. Thanks for watching. As I was opening this machine and doing my research last night, it really clicked with me just the amount of time and effort that has gone into producing this machine. I mean, it's just hundreds, thousands of hours. I don't even have a way of putting a number on it. But everything fits and works. And Even the manual is well written. It doesn't have typos. Nothing in this was just half-assed and good enough, we'll push it along. This is a great example of American ingenuity, American craftsmanship and engineering. Hats off to the Miller team for this redesign. It's a great box, and we're happy to rep it for our customers. If you want to find out what we're building, you can find us on Instagram at QT Equipment, Facebook QT Equipment, or our website qtequipment.com. Work dirty, be happy. Until next time. Where's the camera? There it is. We got it.